They held a family dinner without me, in the house I paid for, so I showed up anyway, with a realtor. There is a particular kind of silence that stings more than a slap, more than any venomous word spat in anger. It's the kind that comes when you realize the people who share your last name no longer see you as part of the family tableau, not even as a corner piece in their pretty little portrait of togetherness. That silence greeted me tonight, long before I even reached the threshold of the house I had bled for, long before my shoes kissed the hardwood floors I had refinished with aching knees and a tight budget. That house was more than property. It was history. Every wall a memory I had carried from blueprint to final paint stroke. And yet, in their laughter, spilling out the windows and echoing across the manicured lawn like a celebration, I was nowhere to be found. No call, no message, not a single flicker of light on my phone screen, no half-hearted excuse, no mistakenly sent text that could give them away. They didn't forget me. They made a choice. I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. From the curb, the house looked pristine. Golden light poured from the dining room windows, casting warm pools on the driveway, softening the brutal chill crawling down my spine. I adjusted my collar, the expensive fabric of my tailored coat folding smooth beneath my fingertips. No anger twisted my features. No trace of confusion or heartbreak colored my expression. Those had been processed in advance, folded away like last season's regrets. Tonight, I came with poise, clarity, and a purpose sharpened by months, no, years, of slow brewing betrayal. Beside me, Alara, the realtor, stood tall in her crimson blazer, tablet in hand, lips curled in a professional smile edged with subtle malice. She didn't need a script. She understood the performance. Her heels clicked beside mine as we approached the front door, her stride confident, measured. The rhythmic crunch of gravel beneath our shoes was a drumroll leading to the grand reveal. I didn't knock. The door, unlocked, as it always was during one of their little private family gatherings, swung open with theatrical precision. The moment we stepped inside, I felt the air change. Laughter froze in the throat of my cousin Clara, who was mid-sip of a Cabernet I had bought for last Thanksgiving. Uncle Peter's fork clinked audibly against his plate, his jaw going slack as he caught sight of me in the foyer, framed by the chandelier light and Alara's poised presence. Conversations collapsed into a hush so total you could hear the fireplace crackle. A photograph hung just above the mantel, recently added, a group shot from the dinner, evidently taken before dessert. Every smiling face was present, every glass raised in a cheer. Everyone except me. My chair at the head of the table had been filled by my younger brother Robert, the golden boy, the effortless charmer who once borrowed 10,000 from me and never brought it up again. Now he held a mocktail glass like it was a royal scepter, the glint of his wristwatch catching the firelight. "Don't stop on my account," I said, voice level, each word measured and deliberate. I just wanted to see what the inside of my own house looked like during a party I wasn't invited to. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Mom was the first to rise, her napkin fluttering to the floor like a white flag. "We didn't think you'd want to come," she offered, her voice brittle, too sweet, as if she were diffusing a stranger at a PTA meeting instead of addressing her son. "You've been so distant lately." "Distant," I repeated, letting the words sit in the air, rot a little. "Right." I turned slightly, allowing the room a full view of the woman beside me. Alara stepped forward, lips parting in a smile designed to dazzle or devastate, depending on who it landed on. "I'm Alara Wynn from Solstice Realty," she said, producing the tablet with a graceful flick of her wrist. The screen illuminated, a gleaming image of the house appearing front and center, with bold letters across the top, "Just listed, elegant family home in prime neighborhood." "Open house is this Saturday," I said, my gaze sweeping the room. "Unless one of you has a cash offer you'd like to make tonight." The clatter that followed was almost musical, a fork dropping from Aunt Sylvia's manicured fingers, Robert's tea glass slipping just enough to spill a dark arc of red across the white linen. My niece, Heather, looking as though she'd swallowed her tongue, eyes darting between her mother and the screen now displaying the bedroom she'd redecorated with her, asking. "You're joking," my father said. His voice cracked like the plaster in the bathroom mirror, the one he swore he'd fixed last spring. "This is a joke." "Don't make jokes," I replied, "not with people who
treat me like a landlord instead of blood.
1,000 unsaid things filled the void. All the times I paid the mortgage while they got back on their feet. The family reunions they hosted here while I was away on business trips. The lights left on, the fridge emptied, the carpet stained with mud and silence. I remembered every note of every excuse. They called it our home when it suited them. But when it came time to acknowledge the hand that built it, they turned their backs. Mom's eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. She knew tears wouldn't work this time. Dad opened his mouth again, but no sound came. Robert actually looked affronted, as though the idea of consequences had never occurred to him. Clara just stared, lips parted, fingers still clenched around her phone like it might save her. I walked further into the room, the soles of my shoes muffled by the rug I imported from Morocco. My presence disturbed the air, peeled back the veneer of comfort they'd wrapped around themselves. "You made yourselves at home in my absence," I said, letting my voice drop just slightly, the way a blade does before it cuts. "Now it's time for you to imagine living somewhere else." Alara tilted the tablet so the photos flipped through with smooth transitions: kitchen, bedrooms, backyard. Her thumb hovered over the share button. "I'm happy to schedule private tours," she said, not missing a beat. "But once it's listed, it goes public." They didn't ask why. They knew, and that was the beautiful part of it. They had made the choice to be family without me. Now I was making the house a home without them. The night after the dinner dissolved in stunned silence, I lay awake in my condo downtown, far from the suburban fiction they still clung to, like it hadn't been exposed for the illusion it was. The skyline beyond my window glowed in cold whites and steel blues, honest lights, indifferent and unforgiving. Unlike the warm deceit that filled the rooms of the house I once called home. That place, with its curated coziness and hand-me-down pretensions, had long since stopped being mine in spirit, even if the deed still bore my name. By morning, the fallout had begun. The messages came first, text after text, their tones sliding from confused to pleading with an almost comical desperation. Mom's name lit up my phone first, every message more frantic than the last. "We need to talk. You can't just sell the house. This isn't fair to everyone else. Fair." The word clawed at me like a dull blade. Where was fairness when I paid their heating bills through the winter, when Robert's car broke down and I quietly covered the repairs, or when I came home from a red-eye flight to find them throwing a backyard party with my grill, my beer, and none of my name on the guest list? I let the phone buzz itself into silence. At noon, Alara and I met at the property again, now framed by the muted golds and dying greens of a late autumn afternoon. The sky was overcast, a solid sheet of pale gray pressing low over the neighborhood. It was the kind of day that stole warmth from the air and replaced it with the taste of metal on your tongue. She was already waiting, her red blazer replaced with a sleek black coat, hair pulled back into a sharp, businesslike twist. Her demeanor remained the same, unshakable, polished, precise. "The listing's live," she said, tapping her tablet. "We've got 6 viewings lined up for Saturday. 3 agents already called asking if you're entertaining early offers." I nodded. "Let them come. Let them walk through it. Let them see the family portraits still hung like relics in a museum of false memories. Let them feel the ghosts of loyalty and gratitude that never lived here." Alara arched a brow, smiling faintly. "You're a poetic kind of angry. I like that." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm awake." She didn't press further. She didn't need to. Some things didn't require explanation. They only needed space to breathe. By late afternoon, the others began to circle like anxious vultures, realizing the carcass might walk away before they get a bite. Robert was the first to arrive, pulling up in his leased German car, the one with payments mysteriously covered each time he was between contracts. He stepped out, wearing a leather jacket that didn't quite fit, and sunglasses that looked absurd in the clouded light. "You're really going through with this?" he said, not even pretending to greet me. His tone was combative, but his eyes were scanning the house like it might vanish while he looked away. "You mean the house I bought, that you and the rest of them used like a community center while conveniently forgetting who pays the property taxes?" He flinched, not outwardly, but in that slight twitch of the jaw that betrays every fragile ego. "This isn't just about you. This house has been part of the family since I signed the loan," I interrupted, stepping closer. "Since I wrote the checks. Since I came home to find strangers sleeping in the guest room because someone thought it was okay to rent it out during a tough month." He spread his arms, the very gesture of empty theatrics. "They loved this place, you know that. They loved what it gave them. Free shelter, free food, free status. Not me." He had no response for that, only the kind of silence that comes when someone realizes their usual tricks won't work, that the magician has exposed the sleight of hand for the cheap parlor act it always was. A second car arrived, Clara and Aunt Sylvia together, like some makeshift emissary delegation sent to negotiate peace in the final hour. Clara stepped out first, her heels clicking on the driveway, voice already soft, rehearsed. "You blindsided us," she said, eyes wide like that somehow added gravity to her performance. "There's a way to handle these things. A conversation. A vote." "I didn't realize we were a democracy," I replied flatly. "Must have missed the ballots when you all decided I wasn't welcome anymore." Aunt Sylvia puffed herself up, her mouth a tight line of practiced authority. "We didn't exclude you. You pulled away. You've always been distant." That word again, as if refusing to be exploited counted as emotional abandonment. "I stopped showing up for abuse dressed as affection. I stopped pretending your thank yous were enough to balance the ledger." She scoffed, glancing at the for sale sign Alara had planted earlier that morning, its presence obscene to them but deeply cathartic to me. "You're punishing everyone over a dinner." "It was never about the dinner," I said, stepping back toward the porch. "It was about every time I was treated like a guest in a house I bought. About how my presence was never wanted, just my resources. You didn't invite me because you didn't want me there, fine. Now you don't have to worry about seeing me here again." Robert muttered something under his breath. Maybe an insult, maybe just a curse spat into the wind. But I didn't care enough to ask him to repeat it. They had expected a tantrum, a storm of shouting, something they could twist into another narrative about me being the unstable one. Instead, I gave them calm, controlled finality. And it terrified them. By the time they left, defeated, sputtering, powerless, Alara had already begun taking calls from other agents. The house was a hot commodity, she said. Good bones, great location, clean lines, and a seller who wasn't emotionally attached. I watched them drive away from the curb, their cars disappearing down the block like exiled royalty stripped of their stolen thrones. Inside the house, I walked room to room one last time, tracing the outlines of memories I no longer had to carry. In the living room, I passed the spot where we once set up a Christmas tree together. The same year they said I was too cold to keep dating that girl they didn't like. In the kitchen, I brushed my hand over the island I installed myself, the one they later scratched hauling in a secondhand espresso machine I never got to use. I ended in the upstairs hallway, where my old bedroom door still bore the faint mark of the time I punched it. 8 years ago, after a screaming match with Dad about how they expected better from me while asking for another loan. It was no longer my room. None of it was mine now. But that felt right. Alara waited outside, tablet in hand, already moving to the next step in the process. "You ready?" she asked. "More than ready." "Then let's sell this place." The morning of the open house arrived draped in a kind of silence that hummed with anticipation. Not the stillness of peace, but the breath held before a final note. Outside, the sky stretched pale and cloudless, sunlight diffused through the crisp November air. The lawn had been freshly trimmed, the hedges manicured to a precision that hadn't existed when the so-called family still roamed the halls like entitled monarchs. Now it looked like a home prepared for new beginnings. Inside, the house had been staged to perfection. Alara's crew worked swiftly, transforming each room into an idealized version of itself. The mismatched throw blankets and cluttered shelves were gone, replaced by tasteful centerpieces and ambient lighting that made the place feel more like a feature in a glossy architectural magazine than a battlefield disguised as a residence. The dining table, once the epicenter of laughter I hadn't been invited to, now held a polished wooden bowl of green apples and a neatly folded brochure listing all the property's features. It made the lies they'd told each other in this space look small by comparison. By 10 a.m., the first prospective buyers were filing through the front door. Couples, investors, a pair of women with a toddler in tow. They walked the halls with open expressions and cautious interest, their voices lowered out of politeness, their steps respectful. No one screamed. No one made demands. No one took for granted that they had a right to be here. I stood off to the side with Alara, watching strangers interact with the space I'd once offered up to blood relatives who only ever saw it as theirs by proximity, not by contribution. The house didn't seem to mind. It was shedding its past like old wallpaper, welcoming new energy with open rooms and clean surfaces. Alara whispered, "There's one cash offer already. Couple from Northbrook. They want to close by next Friday." "That fast?" She nodded. "They're serious, no contingencies, and they love the neighborhood. I didn't ask to meet them. I didn't need to. Whoever walked through those doors and saw potential in this place, without the baggage, without the entitlement, was already better suited to call it home than the ghosts who used to call me brother, son, or cousin. And as if summoned by that unspoken thought, the ghosts appeared. They didn't come together. That would have required coordination they weren't capable of. Instead, they arrived in fractured succession, like echoes stumbling after the truth. Robert showed up first, his hair messier than usual, a jacket thrown on over a wrinkled shirt. He lingered on the front steps, arms crossed like a bouncer, unsure whether he was guarding or begging entry. When a young couple stepped past him to enter, he tried to smile at them, but it came out as a grimace. Inside, he wandered the living room with a practiced casualness, avoiding my eyes while pretending to check for foundation cracks that didn't exist. His presence meant nothing to the buyers. He was just another man wandering a place that didn't belong to him. For once, the illusion had dissolved completely. Clara arrived 10 minutes later, clearly shaken by the number of strangers inspecting what she had once called our family base. She moved room to room as if trying to gather fragments of memories, anchor herself to the idea that she had a claim. But none of the visitors gave her more than a polite nod. No one asked if she was the owner. No one cared. Her invisibility now mirrored what I had felt for years. Eventually, the rest of them came too. My parents, together but brittle. Aunt Sylvia looking winded and overwrought. Heather lingering in the upstairs hallway like she was visiting a childhood museum. They all wore expressions that hovered somewhere between disbelief and desperation. But the house didn't care. The walls had stopped whispering their names. It had become something new. A canvas no longer marred by unspoken resentment or the rot of false kinship. When the last group of buyers filed out near noon, Alara turned to me, her voice calm, triumphant. "We're finalizing with the Northbrook couple. I can have documents to you by Monday." I nodded, eyes on the people still standing awkwardly in what had once been their kingdom. Alara gave them one sweeping glance before stepping onto the porch. "We'll be out in a few minutes," she said to the family, her tone perfectly professional, a scalpel in satin. "Please be respectful of the owner's time." The word stung them. Owner, not son, not nephew, not brother. Owner. When she was gone, they turned to me, forming a semicircle of discomfort and shame in the living room. My father cleared his throat first. "Maybe we overstepped." I looked at him, not with rage, but with the cold clarity of someone who had moved on. "You didn't just overstep. You built a life inside something you never paid for and acted like I was intruding." "We thought it was understood," Mom added weakly, "that this was shared." I tilted my head. "Is that what you thought? When you hosted parties I wasn't invited to? When you gave Robert the master bedroom while I was away working 2 jobs to pay the mortgage?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't ask for that." "No," I said, calm. "You never had to. That's the point." There was silence again, a final silence, the kind that comes when nothing is left to salvage. I didn't fill it. I simply walked past them, slow and deliberate, brushing my fingertips along the edge of the banister on my way to the door. This house is no longer your hiding place. You'll need to find somewhere else to build your lies. I stepped out into the sunlight, the chill of the wind refreshing, sharp in a way that made me feel alive. Behind me, the door closed, not with a slam, but with finality, the kind that doesn't echo because there's nothing left worth calling back. Alara was waiting at the car, sunglasses on, tablet in hand. "All wrapped up?" she asked. "Clean cut," I said. She smiled. "Feels good, doesn't it?" I looked back at the house one last time, not as something lost, but as something released. The weight of it no longer sat on my shoulders. It had gone to people who wanted it for what it was, not what they could take from it. "Yeah," I said. "It does." And then I walked away. No goodbye, no lingering glance, just forward. Always forward. The house was no longer mine, but my peace was, and that was worth more than walls.